Welcome, welcome. My name is Lloyd Borrell. I'm your host. Today, I'm thrilled to have as my guest, Dr. Deitrich Klinghardt. Dr. Klinghardt is founder of the Klinghardt Institute and the American Academy of Neural Therapy. He is medical director of the Institute of Neurobiology and lead clinician at the Sophia Health Institute in Woodinville, Washington. And he is internationally known for his successful treatment of chronic pain and illness. Dr. Deitrich Klinghardt, welcome to the EMF Health Summit.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, you are one of the first medical doctors, to my knowledge, to shine the light on the healing, on the effects of EMFs on health, should I say, not the healing, on the effects of EMFs on health, and embrace it in your healing protocols. So I'd just like to start by asking you, when did this awareness of EMFs start with you?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say it's kind of a sad position to be in, to be one of the first ones on such an obvious and permanent issues that is affecting our health so dramatically. And so I personally had a very good teacher in high school in physics, which is over 50 years ago, who was warning us of the upcoming health crises that electromagnetic fields will be causing. This is in the 1960s. He was very aware of research going on in England to find, there was in the 60s was a crisis in Russia with the American embassy where everybody got ill, and they realized that the Russians were using a microwave weapon to weaponize basically a microwave to affect the health of people. And so my teacher was very aware of that and was also aware of research. Then in response, the Western world responded by research into using microwave as a weapon. And so I can maybe say that the gist of that, was an English researcher, Barry Trower, who worked for the MI6, and through him I came to know later. Now my physics teacher knew that then and talked to us in class about that, but it only became known in the last 10 years that microwave was used in British orphanages to basically sterilize the orphans, because of course orphans have nobody to who's accountable for them. And they also used microwave in psychiatric hospitals to tame patients to see if their psyche could be altered by blanketing the psychiatric wards with certain frequencies of microwave. And basically what was found out then was that the frequency 2.4 gigahertz was the ideal frequency to sterilize a whole population over 2 or 3 generations. That means it induces epigenetic damage to the systems that makes them less likely to be fertile. And that is passed on to the offspring, who then again is blasted with 2.4 gigahertz. And then over 2 or 3 generations, everybody will be sterile. And the fascinating thing is that in the 60s, when my teacher talked about that, that frequency was not used. Now it is the carrier frequency for all cell phone communications and for Bluetooth, for all the wireless applications, the 2.4 gigahertz. So it's a mass attempt to basically sterilize the Western world population. Russia and Iran are using different frequencies that are not doing that damage. So I became aware of this very early on, and then in my 30s, I got in contact with Wolfgang Maass. He is the leader in building biology in Germany, who started a whole teaching of how to build a healthy home and what should be in there and how to protect people and make the biological environment in a home safe. Paula Baker is the architect in the US who has translated all that into architectural work, which is fantastic. And so we had a seminar here in Seattle about 12 or 15 years ago, how to build a healthy home, where for the first time we disclosed all the research that was known at the time about the dangers of microwave, bringing microwave into the home with a Wi-Fi router. Wi-Fi router basically is a cell phone tower that you put on your own in your home, and the cordless phones, which use a different frequency, which have their own dangers, but it's a slower frequency range that's used with the cordless phones. That also cause damage, but not as severe as the microwave. So I have if you want to have a long history with this, even before medical school and then through medical school, I was looking for when are the lectures coming on this, and they never came. And I realized there was something really sinister going on in the world if such an important issue is not discussed in the context of medical school.
Yes, and this is sinister. The way you're describing this, it is sinister, and it's grim. It's deeply worrying. It deeply, one of the pioneers on this, which I'm sure you know about, is Dr. Robert O. Becker. And what Dr. Robert O. Becker said was that the greatest polluting element in the Earth's environment is the proliferation of electromagnetic fields. And I don't want to make this talk any grimmer than it is already, but we do need to know the truth on this. And that's what this summit is about, is sharing the truth, is telling the truth on this, perhaps an inconvenient truth. My question is, do you agree with this statement of Dr. Robert O. Becker?
Oh, absolutely. And Dr. Becker was a personal friend and acquaintance of mine, and his two books are still outstanding and are a must read for, I think, every teenager should read those books. And I do like to say, however, sort of we want to differentiate that there is frequency ranges and applications of electric power that can be used for healing, and it can be used for destruction, just like nuclear energy can be harnessed and can be tamed and used for the good of humanity or for destruction. And the amazing thing for me is, as a modern Western society, that there has been absolutely no intent by government or by the EPA here in the US to fund research in what frequencies are actually health bringing and which ones are destructive, and that they use from the research that was done using the most destructive carrier frequency that was found in research as the frequency with which we are blanketing the planet now. And so the increase in electromagnetic radiation on the planet is completely unnecessary. We had fantastic technologies with fiber optic networks that was completely safe. And by the way, that's used internally. Microsoft is not using wireless; they're using fiber optic networks, which are completely safe. And so the whole telecommunications system was heading in the way of using fiber optics until suddenly, about 10 or 15 years ago, it was derailed into the cell phone tower business, which is the most destructive thing we could have come up with. So, and the rest of the frequencies that we're worried about are all in the military applications. And so they're completely unnecessary. So the electromagnetic pollution of the planet is a man-made, willful, destructive choice that was made that's completely unnecessary. We could all have our phones, and there is certainly frequency ranges in the wireless realm that could have been used to make the cell phone radiation safe, where we can all have our cell phone without causing the destruction to the brain and to the general human health and to nature as well. We know that the microwave radiation is killing trees. It's making trees infertile. It's responsible, in the last 20 years, 80% of all insects have disappeared. And with that, 75% of our songbirds. We know the dying of the bees, yes, that the nicotinides, some insecticides contribute to that, but we know that the bees are not dying where there is no cell phone radiation. We know that that is directly linked. So we are murdering the planet with something that's completely unnecessary, and that there could be better choices. And we're still hoping that there's going to be somebody in the position of policy making and sanity who will change the course of human evolution.
Yeah, and there's a lot in there in what you said, and I was just thinking about what you were saying about the bees. And one of the things that I learned about the bees is that they knew right from the beginning, when Marconi was doing his testing, they saw what happened when he did the testing on the Isle of Wight. They saw it decimated the bee population, and yet they carried on, So it is just really incredible for me, as someone who's experienced electrical hypersensitivity, who knows how dangerous it is firsthand. It is just mind-blowing that there are people that have known about these dangers, and yet it's still going on, the dangers, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse. And obviously we're moving towards 5G, and it's getting worse and worse because everybody wants this. Everybody wants the wireless world. That's the thing, because everybody is only seeing one side of the coin, which is the convenience of it, because it is incredibly convenient.
Well, let me say this. The truth is that people have not been told the truth, that their depression, that their insomnia, that their chronic illness is directly linked to this. And so if people would be informed properly, people would have a choice to make a different choice. But right now, everybody thinks their chronic depression, their chronic lack of zest, of energy, is their own personal problem. People have not been told the dimension of this. Let me give you a number here, here that in the last 20 years, the main cause of death in women has changed. It used to be cancer, followed by heart disease, followed by a variety of other illnesses. And now the number one cause of death in women is neurological disease. It increased in the last 20 years, 663%. And that's entirely, completely linked to the exposure to Wi-Fi. And so basically, the Western world right now is collectively committing suicide with this program. And of course, in addition to that, the cell phone frequencies and the way cell phones are constructed are highly addictive because they stimulate the dopamine producing neurons in the brain. And so every time you use the cell phone, you get an enforcement in the brain to use it more, because you take the other neuropeptides in the brain and funnel them towards producing dopamine, the addictive substance in the brain, but away from acetylcholine, from the higher thinking molecule. Acetylcholine is responsible for memory. So memory is going down, higher thinking is going down, critical thinking is going down, and the addictive part of the brain is blossoming and is addicted to something that will actually kill you and shorten your lifespan, cripple your ancestor, your offspring will be sicker and sicker. And so it's a destructive cycle that we're in, that when you put the science together, it is well known. I don't think there is anybody particular evil in the government, but most government officials are attorneys who've never once learned how to read a scientific study, and they're the decision makers, and they do not understand when the science is brought before them what the significance of that is. And so, we were hoping in Germany that the Chancellor of Germany and Mrs. Merkel is a well-known, well-established physicist who certainly understands the dangers of this, and there has been some resistance based on her internal dialogue of bring the most destructive technologies like the smart meters and other things to Germany. She does exert her influence while she is in power, which is now shaky, and so obviously it's going to go downhill there also.
So, and yeah, just to pick a point on what you said there, it is difficult for people to comprehend the dimension of this thing, the all-encompassing dimension of it. But I want to just change tack, because even people that are following this summit and that are learning about this, it is wow, it is pretty amazing, and you're sharing some amazing information here, and I've had many other speakers also who've shared some amazing insights. But I'd like to just change tack and talk about healing, because quite a few years ago, I was on your website and I came across an article which talked about the 5 levels of healing, which is shown on this document here, which is a wonderful, it's actually a PDF, which is free for anybody to download. And it's your systematic model for healing. So you've got these various bodies, the physical body, the energy body, the mental body, the intuitive body, and the spiritual body. So this is obviously an alternative approach to health, and it encompasses the notion that we have an electric body, and that each cell emits biophotons. That's a form of light. So my question is quite simply, why is this so important to understand? Or is it so important to understand?
Yeah, as medical doctors, we are trained during our university years to become salespeople for the pharmaceutical industry. That means pretty much everything that we learn about causes of ill health. Each illness is caused by a lack of a particular patented pharmaceutical item. Yeah, so illnesses are no longer caused by the true causes of illness, but they're caused by a lack of a particular pharmaceutical. And so each illness is looked at, what are the number of patented pharmaceuticals that you need to give to fix it. And so to widen the perception of physicians, I choose a model that goes back 12,000 years to a series of early publications in a yogic tradition in India, which mentions the 5 bodies, that we're not only the physical body, which is governed by biochemistry, but we also have the forces of physics fully operating in us, creating a field that is larger than a physical body. It's an electromagnetic field, a magnetic field, an electric field, and a biophoton field, light emissions. And that field interacts with the environment that we are in, and has a reciprocal effect on the physical body. And of course, the effect of electromagnetic radiation is largely on that level, which feeds back into the physical body and changes our biochemistry and our anatomy and our our gene transcription and all that. And so, and beyond the electromagnetic level or the level of physics is, of course, the psychological and the spiritual levels, which I don't think we need to go into here, but it's like there's, of course, a higher part of ourselves that governs the lower bodies. But my experience is, and I think some of the listeners will hear this, if the body becomes uninhabitable for the spirit, That means if the body is so distorted and so far away from nature in its biochemistry and its electromagnetic functions, that the spirit can no longer live inside the physical body, it simply detaches from the physical body. And patients describe that to me have a permanent out-of-body experience. That means that the spirit no longer has control over the functions of the physical body. It is detached from it. And with that comes a whole host of problems. First of all, the physical body and the energy body become dysfunctional when they're not governed by the higher bodies, but also uh, the 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 person in its expression and behavior becomes more and more like a person without a soul, without a spirit. And we see that in the teenagers that are on the cell phone all day long, on the computer all day long, that are capable of doing atrocities that are unimaginable to us older people, and are there is a move away from normal, beautiful, compassionate humanity to a robot-like existence from this detachment. And I would dare to say that the current electromagnetic environment is the main cause of that. It drives, so to say, the soul, the spirit out of the body and makes the body vulnerable to be taken over by lower functions of the brain that are not governed by the spirit. So I hope I said that right. Some of you will now probably shut the computer off and think I've said enough, but
Yeah,
some of you will
because
get
it
the
can sound,
seriousness of this.
yes, and it is very serious, and it can sound a little bit woo-woo what you're saying here, but it's obviously when all you've known or heard about or been told is what your doctor is telling you, you know, about this pharmaceutical approach to health, and then when you hear somebody talk about this, the thing to remember is, as you say, it's like 12,000 years old, so it's not as if you've invented it, you've just put it into contemporary language. And so, you know, there are those that argue that chronic illness is related directly to the amount of toxins that somebody can get rid of. So how, yeah, I'd like to just talk about detox if we can. So, you know, how important is detox, and how can this be best achieved?
And so important in the context of what we're talking about is research that was done by Professor Yoshiaki Omura, who simply found in his research that it's the dispersed metals in our body, the toxic metals in our body, that are actually the antenna for microwave and for other man-made radiation. And so with radiation, you always need two things. You need the place where it's broadcasted from, the sender, and you need to have a receiver. And the receiver for all electromagnetic radiation is the metals, and it's the metals in our body. Now we need magnesium, we need copper and zinc, but we do not need lead and mercury and cadmium and others. And so we found that by focusing on detoxing the metals in the body, we can greatly reduce electrosensitivity that make people less vulnerable to the environmental radiation that's everywhere now. And so we focus very much on two metals. It's the sulfhydryl affinitive metals like mercury and lead, which we detox with coriander and chlorella and a couple of other natural things. But we also use medical drugs like DMSA or DMPS, or intravenous vitamin C works quite well. And then there's another group of metals like aluminum and iron, which we detox differently. For the aluminum, which is the most abundant toxic metal in us and all of us now, we detox with a high dose of silica and an ionic foot bath, which activates the kidneys to selectively increase the aluminum excretion. Key Science, KI Science, is the company that right now has the best protocols on all of this. So, but I think that's all I want to say about detox. Now, aluminum has a synergistic effect with glyphosate, which is a main herbicide used in the agro chemistry, the farming industry, and all of us are toxic with glyphosate. Glyphosate binds to aluminum and carries it straight into our brain, and therefore detoxing glyphosate along with aluminum has been a incredible crucial piece of healing technology for our time.
Mm. And of course, a big issue for many people is metal fillings, amalgams, which and there's this interaction, is there not, between these electromagnetic frequencies and what people have in their tooth, teeth, these metals. And one piece I was reading was saying that, which I think was from research that you did, or that you were quoting, that one cell phone call can liberate 600 times more mercury from amalgam fillings than otherwise would be the case. So dealing with these metal fillings is like super important, is it not? For somebody who's
Absolutely, yeah.
EMF
So
sensitive,
a
generally.
precondition for detoxing people and for making the person less of an antenna is to have a metal-free mouth. Now, it's been shown that when you make a phone call, the mercury in the silver amalgam fillings evaporates to much faster, much higher degree. But we're also concerned about gold crowns. We're also concerned about titanium implants, which are very receptive to microwave. So we work with a group of dentists throughout the world to have the fillings removed.
I'd like to talk about solutions. Your top 5 EMF protection tips for, let's say, general health, firstly. So what would you say somebody who's learning about this, listening to this, and beginning to understand that EMFs are potentially lethal? What are your top 5 tips here?
Okay, so number one, of course, is cleaning up your own home. And it starts with the Wi-Fi router, which probably pretty much everyone who listens to this has in their home. If you don't have any other options, turn the Wi-Fi router off whenever you're not needing to be on the internet. That's the cheap solution. The better solution is to get a wired connection. Now, it used to be easy to turn the broadcasting option of the Wi-Fi router off from the computer. Now the new Wi-Fi routers, for sinister reasons again, do not allow you to do that. And so we recommend people that do a broadband and have a wired connection. We have a friend here who has a company called Little Tree Group, littletreegroup.com. And she makes a bag with a Swiss shield. It's a cloth that doesn't allow Wi-Fi to go through. And so you bag your Wi-Fi router in this baggy thing, and then you minimize the radiation that comes out of it. That's one option. The other one is the cordless phones. There's definitely, if you still have a cordless phone, get rid of it. It's broadcasting 24/7. There is several companies that make cordless phones that only switch the broadcasting option of the base station on when you're actually on the phone. But those are far more expensive, and that's probably not what you have in the home right now. So that's number one. Yeah. Number two is your own body. If you have metals in your mouth, invest into getting them out. Let the fillings be replaced with plastic fillings, or crowns with ceramic crowns or plastic crowns. If you have titanium implants, they need to be replaced with zirconium oxide implants. Those are ceramic implants that are non-conductive, non-microwave receiving. Yeah, so that's number one. Number two, at night, switch off all the fuses in the house. The circuitry in the walls and the alternating currents going in, pushing in and out of your lamp and your alarm clock creates very, very strong electromagnetic fields that have been shown to be very destructive to human health. This includes the fuses that control your fridge. We know that every time the fridge goes on, the engine in the fridges unfortunately create what's called infrasound, very low frequency sound that has been shown to cause cancer in people. And so we want that off at night. A good fridge can easily be off for 8 hours without thawing out. If it thaws out, it's a bad fridge where the seals are broken and it costs you too much energy. So get a new fridge, but not a new fridge that connects with the smart meter. So number three, get involved with fighting the smart meter that may already be on your apartment or your house, or will be installed soon. There's a website, Take Back Your Power, by Josh DeSole, who is a friend. He has invested his whole life in helping people how to get the smart meters removed. Smart meters are absolutely destructive to your health, and you do have control over that. There is a way of communicating with the power company to have it de-installed, and you get all the legal forms and the information on that website. Take Back Your Power. This is for us here in the US. I don't know if you're in England or if you're here. Unfortunately, England has rolled out the smart meter plan. Germany is still resisting it, thanks to Angela, but will also break down. Smart meters are supposed to only send, smart meters are surveillance devices that basically survey your household and sell the information gained from that to the companies that sell fridges and that sell washing machines, and probably sold to more sinister for more sinister purposes than that alone. And so the smart meter does not serve in saving you money. It has never done that. In fact, everybody who's ever looked into that shows that the smart meter, people that have a smart meter now, that their cost of electricity has gone up, has not gone down. And so it's an evil an evil technology that's imposed on us. Now, the rest of my suggestions are probably more expensive. Ideally, people that have their own home should have the whole home shielded towards the outside world. There is a paint called Swiss Shield paint. There's other paints. They're basically electric conductive paints that the outside wall of the house ideally is painted. And then the paint needs to be grounded. That means there needs to be a copper plate inserted in it with a connection to the earth. And you need curtains that don't allow microwave to come into your house. That's the ideal thing. If that's not possible, we recommend people to get what's called a sleep sanctuary. It's a structure that looks like a mosquito net that's over the bed, that's made of this silver-coated cloth that doesn't allow the microwave to come inside that, and that needs to be underneath the bed and like a mosquito net over the bed, that reduces the radiation that comes inside to 1/10,000th of the amplitude that it otherwise would be, and is far, far less damaging. And so this is something we insist that all the children that are in trouble with brain cancer or autism or neurodevelopmental disorders get a sleep sanctuary at the minimum requirement. And again, we have our friend Lynn. She is a retired friend of mine. littletreegroup.com is doing that. You send them the measurement of your bed and she sews you the canopy, that is needed. And then maybe the last suggestion is, there's a lot of discussion about this, but the people that are opposing this are simply stupid or don't understand physics, is the protective clothing. the protective clothing works, period. So this is cloth that is metal coated with a certain pore size that reflects incoming microwave. And the more body parts you cover, the less total radiation you get. It's important to understand that the damage caused by microwave or by electromagnetic radiation in general is cumulative. That means you take all the sources in account and all the body surfaces exposed. And the more you can minimize that, the longer you're going to live and the less your brain is going to be affected and your behavior is going to be affected and the less your mood will be affected. And so we recommend people at least to wear a t-shirt because it covers the largest body portion, with the shielding cloth. Less EMF is a good website for that. If people are extremely sensitive, they need to wear a full burqa, at least for a while, where the entire body is protected. And so there's people that argue that this can't work, or then your head is still exposed and the radiation creeps in your neck and then under the shirt. That is absolute physical bullshit. So the protective clothing works. We have proof in the people that do it. I would like to say here that people with ALS or MS or Parkinson's, with the serious neurological diseases, tremendously benefit from this. Maybe one last piece of technology, the Stetzer filters. Graham Stetzer is a wonderful physicist who developed these simple condenser-like plugs that you put in the outlets in your home. There's a certain way of doing that that's easy to learn. And we've had people have dramatic benefits in their health from just doing that. I call that a daytime technology. So during the daytime, to minimize the household current's effect on your health, you use the Stetzer filter, but at night you switch the whole thing off. This is pretty much all I have in terms of tips for people.
So let me just ask you just clarification on one point, if I can. With regard to the shielding, is that a blanket recommendation for everybody, that everybody should shield? Or are you saying that this depends on your particular circumstances, mainly for people that are electrically hypersensitive? What is it? Is it general, or is it just for certain individuals?
It's for everybody who wants to live out a normal life and experience their own self, their own spirit in them without being detached, to live out a healthy life where you eliminate electromagnetic fields as a cancer-causing factor, as a behavior-altering factor, as a mood-altering factor. Everybody needs to shield. Now, there may be some places out in the country where there's no cell phone reception, where you do not have to shield. That's a rare exception. But even in the country now, there is cell phone towers everywhere where we look, and so it's going to be rare to find a place. And unfortunately, the whole phenomenon is not really dose dependent. There is even if you're receiving a very, very low dose of cell phone radiation, it can still cause all the problems linked to it. It's the same like mercury toxicity. It's not really linked to the absolute amount of mercury in your system. Some people can be getting seriously ill with small amounts of it. This is an all or nothing issue. You want to reduce the electromagnetic exposures to as close to nothing as you can, and that's when your health bounces back and your happiness comes back, and your will to dance, to go dancing on the weekend, and your will to go out hiking, and your will to invite friends and laugh together, and that all comes back with the shielding. It does not come back without the shielding.
Yeah. And can I ask you, do you walk the talk on this in your home? Do you shield?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And in my office.
Okay. So what I know is that once you start reacting to these EMFs, it is incredibly difficult to wind back time, so to speak, to get back to any sense of normality. And I'm speaking from personal experience. It took me about 10 years. And I know a lot of people who, a lot of people who go on my website who are electrically sensitive and not being able to achieve, get back to a normal situation, to vibrant health, to be able to go dancing, as you say, and go hiking and enjoy life. As we all, it's a fundamental right that we all should be able to enjoy life. So, my question is, how successful have you been in healing people with electrical hypersensitivity, or EMF intolerance syndrome, as we're also calling it now?
Okay, so let me clarify, because it's very important to clarify this. Everybody exposed to this gets an altered consciousness. Everybody exposed to this gets the same increase in cancer rates later in life, cardiovascular disease, neurological disease. The people that are electro-hypersensitive are the blessed ones, where the body still gives them a warning signal that something really sinister is going on here. Yeah, so I just want to make that clear, that people that say, well, I'm not hypersensitive, so I can use my cell phone, it doesn't disturb me. Well, good luck, you're still going to get the same rates of brain cancer and the same rates of insomnia and the same rate of depression as the people that are hypersensitive. So hypersensitivity is a symptom on top of the sensitivity. It's an allergy towards the frequencies that are used. And so we have 2 or 3 tools that have worked. So tool number 1, of course, is to decrease the allergenic agent. Yeah, that's what we talked about, to decrease the exposure. That has to be number 1. Number 2 is to stabilize the system. We know from Marty Paul and others that one of the basic mechanisms is the influx of calcium into the cell, which is basically one of the triggers then for the mastocytosis, for the mast cell reactions and the histamine reactions and all the downstream stuff that happens. And so to stabilize that, we have a few tools. One are 2 or 3 herbs. It's really 3 herbs. It's coriander, it is rosemary, and it is propolis, which is not an herb, but it is a plant-based bee product. And so there is a combination of that. The company Ki Science, Ki Science, makes a product called Ray Wave. And so when we give people that in a pretty good doses, people have gain amazing stability towards the electrosensitivity. And the other tool that I've pioneered is giving a high dose of methylated folate, 20, 30, or 40 milligrams of methylated folate for a while, few months, maybe even a few years. That has hugely stabilized many of our patients. And then the third one that I've pioneered in the last year is the treatment of retroviruses. So microwave activates, but microwave inactivates the mechanisms that we have to tame some of the viruses in our system. And so the most sinister group of them are the human endogenous retroviruses. And when they get unleashed by exposure to Wi-Fi, people get the chronic fatigue, they get the mast cell reactions, they get the histamine reactions, they get the brain fog and all of that. And so we learned how to treat the retroviruses with natural products, but that goes over the talk here, like how to do that. So these are my strategies: the Ray Wave, the high dose methylated folate, and taming the retroviruses. And of course the reduction in exposure.
And how successful has this been?
This has been phenomenally effective. And people that really follow through with this, it's very, very effective.
And so we're coming to the end here, but I get the sense that you're very passionate about this subject. It's such an important subject, and as you said when you started at the beginning, you learnt about this 50 years ago, and I get the sense that you've been going back to it ever since, and learning more and more and more, because it's evolving your strategy all the time. Any last comments here, observations you would like to make to share with viewers?
Yeah. Yeah. So my last comment is this: that current numbers in research are lining up that half of us alive today will die either with or of Alzheimer's disease or other degenerative disorders of the brain. Half of you listening right now. And it was in about 2005, so 13, 14 years ago, Ole Johansson, researcher at the Karolinska Institute, did a study in Sweden where he clearly linked the incidence of Alzheimer's disease to the exposure of microwave from the communication networks. And he predicted that there will be a catastrophic increase in Alzheimer's disease in the next decades. And so his prophecy has turned out to be true. These numbers are true. Half of us, Alzheimer's disease. I hope I'm the other half myself. But and it's ridiculous when you see where the research money for Alzheimer's disease is going right now. It's trying to fix the damage from this instead of changing the frequency. It's all about, all we're asking for is change the frequency. Do some research which frequencies are benevolent. There is frequency gaps in the huge infinite frequency spectrum that are actually healing for us. Why not use that? Why not use that instead of choosing the most destructive frequency that ever was found in on this frequency spectrum? And I like to say one last thing is like 2.4 gigahertz was the most destructive frequency. We're going now to 5G, which actually what will be used is 4.8 gigahertz, which is the higher octave of the most destructive frequency that will give us problems squared. You know, that is very, very clear from the physics of it, the simple understanding of physics. You know, when you take a frequency that shatters glass, like the voice of Ella Fitzgerald did, and you double the frequency, you go to the higher octave, you will break the glass twice as fast as the lower frequency does. And so we're moving now from destroying the human condition to destroying it squared. That's my last word.
Well, I think that's a great way to finish. Change the frequency. Come on, folks, change the frequency. Dr. Klinghardt, it's been fascinating and enlightening talking with you, exchanging with you today. You are a pioneer on this. Your work is groundbreaking. You're actually managing to make sense of all this for so many people. And I know there's a lot of doctors are looking to, I know you're helping a lot of other doctors, and other doctors are looking to you for guidance on this, and you're kind of leading the way. So thanks for that, and thank you for being part of this EMF Health Summit.
Yeah, and thanks to you, your courage, and also thanks to the listeners spending your time on listening to our strange world here. Yeah, so I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. And for all of you who've joined us today, thanks for being part of this movement. My name is Lloyd Borrell. Thank you. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.